Representative Sollman will be recognized first.
Good morning, co-chairs McLean and Byer, vice chairs Boquist and Noble, and members of the committee. For the record, I am Janeen Sollman, the state representative for House District 30, which includes areas of Banks, North Plains, Hillsborough, and Aloha Beaverton. I come to you today with enthusiastic support of House Bill 2498. I'm happy to be joined by colleagues and Chad Ludwig, an advocate in the deaf community and instructor with the Oregon Department of Public Safety and Standards. This bill is similar to Senate Bill 1033 from the 2019 session and comes before this committee now with bipartisan and bicameral support. I'm bringing this concept forward at the request of a constituent in my district. The bill is quite simple, yet critically important. It would allow members of the deaf and hard of hearing community to choose to indicate on a driver's license, a vehicle registration, or a state issued ID card of their DHH status. Now, a routine traffic stop can be apprehensive or make anyone apprehensive or nervous, but for a member of the DHH community, especially so, if they are a member of the BIPOC community, there is even a more heightened concern for that. The worry is that the inability to directly communicate with the officer right away could lead to rushed judgments, which may become an escalated or dangerous scenario. Now, with the passage of 2498, an officer will see the DHH indication on the law enforcement data system, or LEDS, and have that information before approaching the vehicle, which is an incredibly important tool for safety and de-escalation. It is a very good information for an officer to have at a scene of a traffic accident as well, so that they know that additional support may be needed for communication to help the driver. Colleagues, I urge your support and your sponsorship. And with your aye vote on this bill in a work session, you can help take an important step to making Oregon a safer place for our deaf and hard of hearing community. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sollman. At this time, I'm going to ask if we could keep the questions until the end of the panel, if that's okay, if you can stay. Can you stay, Representative? Thank you so much. Representative Morgan, are you there this morning?
Yes, good morning, and thank you, co-chairs McLean and Byer, and co-vice chairs Boquist and Noble, and other transportation members. I will keep my comments short, relatively. My name is Lily Morgan. I am the House District 3 representative, which is the heart of Josephine County. Today, I'm testifying from the perspective as a former reserve deputy sergeant and my experience on patrol in conducting traffic stops. Some have asked why this bill would be necessary when there are placards that can be issued to drivers that they can hold up to an officer and indicate that the DHH status. But some traffic stops, that is not necessarily possible, and I would bring to attention high-risk traffic stops. In this situation, the officer does not approach the vehicle. They rather give verbal directives from the safety of cover, and they would not be able to, in that situation, be able to see a placard in the vehicle. So in order for this to be eased, it won't cover every situation. You don't always know who the driver is, but it will be related to the registration of the vehicle, and you can run the registered owner and see if that registered owner has that status. And so the officers would be able to have that information before approaching the vehicle. We know that officers must make quick assessments and decisions based on the information at hand, and House Bill 2498 will just give them an increased ability to have more information at hand and reducing the risk towards people in a situation of a traffic stop. So I encourage your support of House Bill 2498 and the subsequent amendments that would allow it to be a code similar to like a donor and a motorcycle endorsement. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Morgan. Appreciate your testimony this morning. And we will now go to Representative Neron.
Thank you so much, Chair McLean, Chair Byer, and Vice Chair Boquist, and Vice Chair Noble, and members of the committee. For the record, I am Courtney Neron, and I am the State Representative for House District 26. House Bill 2498 would allow individuals who may be deaf or hard of hearing to request a registration card providing notice, and was also introduced, as Rep. Sollman indicated, in 2019 as SB 1033. Individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing often cannot effectively communicate with law enforcement officers when these individuals have been pulled over for traffic stops. These community members are often asked to lip read or interpret body language, as my uncle who is deaf learned to do from a very young age. Sign language and hand signals, hand signs, can be misinterpreted as threatening or aggressive, which can lead to miscommunication, misunderstanding, and potentially escalation. Oregonians who are deaf and hard of hearing are at an immediate disadvantage in traffic stops because of this structural barrier. House Bill 2585 would begin the work to remove that barrier and provide deaf and hard of hearing drivers with more tools to be able to communicate with law enforcement officers immediately. This bill would reduce the anxiety, stress, and fear of traffic stops for people who are deaf and hard of hearing by providing the option to include notation about their situation with which will help our police officers effectively adapt and respond appropriately to the situation. And I want to thank Representative Sollman for her work on this bipartisan bicameral effort, as well as the committee chairs for hearing our House Bill 2498 today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Neron. Thank you very much. At this time, do we have Chad Ludwig?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to the co-chairs and co-vice chairs. My name is Chad Ludwig. I am a resident of Independence, Oregon. You will see a copy of my PowerPoint slides included that has additional information that I'd like to share with you today. And the information I'm going to have to summarize for you today, but I do encourage you to take some additional time and look through it when you can. In my transparency page, I do add that I'm also an instructor at the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training. And I have been working there for 3 years, training over 2,000 law enforcement professionals in the state of Oregon. I'm often asked the question by law enforcement, how will they know that I'm going to be approaching a deaf or hard of hearing person? And the answer I've always had to share with them is, you won't. Often we try to train them to look for indicators, to look for signs. But again, it depends on the situation. Many of those signs are easily overlooked. And law enforcement officers are nervous about approaching a person that they might not be able to communicate with. It's a low frequency and very high liability situation to encounter a deaf or hard of hearing person in their work. We have a community-based needs assessment that the legislature funded back in 2015. And during that time, we gathered data and got close to 900 respondents. More than half of those respondents indicated that they have had difficulty in communicating with law enforcement in the state. A lot of those difficulties include officers not understanding that they were deaf, communication not being successful, their needs or accommodations not being recognized. There's also many people who might try to pretend to be deaf and get away with things. This would be a way to allow officers to check, and there would be greater reliability, greater credibility for a deaf or hard of hearing person indicating their status. In the state of Oregon, we have over 1 million people with hearing loss in some form, and that's according to CDC, Center for Disease Control statistics. That's 1 in 4 Oregonians with some form of hearing loss. So if you consider this, it could be providing those 1 million people the possibility to disclose that they're a person with some hearing loss. Our goal here today is to increase the safety and also to increase partnership between law enforcement and the deaf and hard of hearing communities. And I do ask all of you to recognize this as a vital need, that we be able to document in the LEDS system for law enforcement to support the deaf and hard of hearing community as a whole. Thank you all for your time and attention to this very important bill.
Thank you, Mr. Ludwig, for being here to testify today.